Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Have you ever wondered why, after a long day, a glass of beer or wine feels so appealing? It might feel like a modern habit, a product of our busy culture. But what if I told you that this urge is an echo from millions of years ago? That our relationship with alcohol didn't start in a brewery, but on the floor of an ancient forest, with our primate ancestors. This is the core of a fascinating idea called the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis, and it suggests our attraction to alcohol isn't a modern flaw, but an ancient survival tool. The theory was formally proposed by Dr. Robert Dudley, a biologist at UC Berkeley. While studying fruit-eating animals in Panama, he had a thought. What if our taste for alcohol is an evolutionary hangover? The hypothesis is simple but profound. For our primate ancestors, the smell of alcohol wasn't the smell of a party. It was the smell of survival. It was a beacon that led them to calories. To understand this, we need to picture the world of our ancestors. In a dense tropical forest, food is a constant challenge. For frugivores, animals that eat fruit, a ripe piece of fruit is like striking gold. It's packed with energy-rich sugars. But fruit doesn't stay perfect forever. It ripens, over-ripens, and falls to the forest floor. Once there, microscopic yeasts that are everywhere in the environment get to work. They consume the sugars and, through fermentation, convert them into ethanol. This process releases a distinct aroma, and ethanol is a key component. According to the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis, this alcoholic scent acted like a long-distance billboard, advertising a calorie-rich meal. In a world of scarce resources, the ability to follow that scent trail could be the difference between feasting and starving. The ethanol itself was also a bonus. By weight, ethanol contains nearly twice the calories of carbohydrates, so the fruit wasn't just easier to find, it was more energy-dense. Low levels of alcohol might have even worked as an appetite stimulant, encouraging our ancestors to eat more of the nutritious fruit. So this framework suggests that when a modern human feels a pull towards an alcoholic drink, we're not just responding to social cues. We're tapping into a deeply ingrained sensory bias, a relic from a time when the smell of ethanol meant food, energy, and survival. Now this is a cool idea, but is there any proof? For years, stories of drunk animals in the wild were mostly anecdotal. But recent science has provided some hard data. A key study focused on black-handed spider monkeys in Panama. A research team led by primatologist Christina Campbell discovered that the fruit these monkeys regularly ate contained low concentrations of alcohol, typically between 1% and 2% by volume. To make sure the monkeys were actually using the alcohol and not just consuming it by accident, the researchers analyzed the primate's urine. They found secondary metabolites of ethanol, which is clear proof that the monkeys' bodies were actively breaking down the alcohol for energy. The evidence gets even stronger when we look at our closest living relatives, chimpanzees. In Bossou, Guinea, researchers have watched wild chimpanzees get quite clever. They've been seen using leafy sponges to soak up fermented palm sap from containers that local villagers used to collect it. The alcohol content of this sap wasn't trivial. It ranged from about 3% up to almost 7%, which is comparable to a strong beer. The scientists saw both male and female chimps, even young ones, participating in these drinking sessions, which sometimes lasted for half an hour. Some chimps were estimated to consume up to 85 milliliters of pure alcohol, the equivalent of a human drinking a bottle of wine. And they showed clear signs of inebriation afterward, like falling asleep right after drinking. One even became agitated and restless, a behavior many humans might recognize. More recently, footage from a national park in Guinea-Bissau showed wild chimps sharing fermented African breadfruit, which had a low alcohol content of about 0.6%. This social sharing of an alcoholic food source hints at behavioral parallels with humans that are hard to ignore. The story of our evolutionary dance with alcohol is also written directly into our DNA. Our ability to efficiently process ethanol is thanks to a specific enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase 4, or ADH4. Think of ADH4 as the bouncer at the door. It's the first enzyme in our digestive system to start breaking down alcohol, stopping too much of it from hitting our bloodstream all at once. Through incredible research where scientists essentially resurrected ancient versions of the ADH4 gene, they traced its evolution. They found that about 10 million years ago, a single crucial genetic mutation occurred in the common ancestor of humans, chimpanzees, and gorillas. This mutation, known as A294V, made the ADH4 enzyme 40 times more efficient at metabolizing ethanol. This wasn't a random event. This genetic upgrade happened right around the time of major climate change, when our ancestors were moving from a life in the trees to a life on the ground. On the forest floor, they would have found a lot more fallen fruit, which, as we've discussed, is far more likely to be fermenting and contain higher levels of alcohol. In this new terrestrial environment, an ape that could eat this fermented fruit without getting dangerously drunk would have a huge advantage. It opened up a whole new, valuable food source that other animals couldn't safely access. Some scientists even suggest this newfound tolerance for alcohol may have saved our ape ancestors from extinction during a period when they were competing fiercely with monkeys, many of whom could eat unripe fruit. As a supporting piece of evidence, more distant relatives like orangutans, who still spend most of their lives in trees with less access to fallen fruit, have a much less efficient version of the ADH4 enzyme. This strongly links a ground-dwelling lifestyle to the evolution of our alcohol tolerance. But here's where humans took a giant leap. Our primate cousins may have been scrumping fermented fruit for millions of years, but we are the only ones who started producing alcohol on purpose. The earliest hard archaeological evidence for this comes from a 13,000-year-old burial site in Rockafet Cave near Haifa, Israel. Researchers there found residue in ancient stone mortars that indicates the brewing of a beer-like substance, probably for ritual feasts to honor the dead. Even earlier, about 9,000 years ago in Jiahu, China, pottery shards revealed traces of a fermented drink made from rice, honey, and fruit. These discoveries are so old that they've led some anthropologists to propose the beer before bread hypothesis. This is the idea that the desire to produce alcohol was actually a primary motivation for our ancestors to start cultivating grains in the first place, that agriculture itself was driven by a thirst for beer. From these ancient origins, alcohol became woven into the fabric of human society. It was central to religious ceremonies in ancient Greece and Rome, a social lubricant in Mesopotamia, and even used as medicine in Egypt. The development of distillation in the late medieval period gave us spirits with concentrations of alcohol our ancestors could never have imagined. This brings us to the modern consequences, what Dr. Dudley calls the evolutionary hangover. For millions of years, our attraction to ethanol was adaptive. It led us to a food source that came packaged with fiber and nutrients, making it physically difficult to consume enough to become truly sick or dangerously impaired. Today, the situation is completely different. We have access to alcohol in highly concentrated, pure liquid forms, completely untethered from the fruit pulp that once moderated its effects. Our ancient craving, which was once a survival advantage, is now mismatched with our modern environment. This mismatch, the theory argues, is a major contributor to the modern problems of alcohol abuse and addiction. It reframes alcoholism not as a moral failing, but as a disease of nutritional excess, much like obesity or type 2 diabetes. It's a case of a once beneficial drive becoming maladaptive in a world of superstimuli and overabundance. However, like any good scientific theory, the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis has its critics. One of the leading skeptics is Catherine Milton, another primatologist at UC Berkeley. Milton argues that the scent of ethanol, especially in overripe fruit, might actually be a deterrent for primates, not an attractant. She points out a lack of concrete evidence that primates preferentially seek out fermented fruit. In one of her studies involving 22 primate species, none of them chose fermented fruits over non-fermented ones. Milton proposes a different explanation. She believes our taste for alcohol is not hardwired by genetics, but learned through culture. Unlike other primates, she argues, humans don't have a strong innate nutritional wisdom. We rely on culture to tell us what is safe and good to eat, and that includes alcohol. It's a behavior passed down through generations, not a biological imperative. She also points to the general human tendency to seek out mind-altering substances as a possible reason for alcohol's enduring popularity. Other research has also chipped away at some of the folk wisdom surrounding alcohol. A recent study, for instance, challenged the idea of beer goggles. It found that drinking alcohol didn't actually make people rate others as more physically attractive. What it did do was make them more likely to approach people they already found attractive. It seems to be more of a liquid courage effect than a change in perception. So where does that leave us? The debate over the origins of our thirst for alcohol is ongoing. The Drunken Monkey Hypothesis remains a powerful and compelling theory. It gives us a deep, evolutionary context for a behavior we often see as purely social or personal. It suggests that our modern happy hour has roots that stretch back millions of years, back to our ancestors foraging on the forest floor. While scientists continue to gather more data, the story of Scrumping apes offers a profound insight into one of humanity's most complex substances. It's a reminder that our relationship with alcohol is shaped not just by choice or culture, but by the long, winding path of evolution. It is a legacy, for better or worse, inherited from our ancient and perhaps slightly tipsy ancestors.